So after 4 officers, my first enlisted man.
So, my name is Brad Moffitt. I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Really have no ties here to Boston, except I lived in North Reading when I was a small child for a couple of years. And then before 9/11, my folks moved to St. Louis. So I had a full ride scholarship to college from high school, and I was two and a half weeks away from going to college up in Chicago. And I went and visited a buddy who was in the National Guard. He was down at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, and he had the weekend off, and I went down and visited him. And I came back up, and it just, something when I was down there clicked, and came home, and the next day, secretly I snuck off with the car to the recruiter station, and was there, I don't know, about 6 hours, and I got through everything, and the recruiter was like, all right, we're gonna send you off and do everything like this. He was flipping through the paperwork, he was like, wait a minute, you're 17. You have to have your parents' permission to sign off. Keep in mind, so this was the end of May, beginning of June. My birthday is the second week in July. Nope, I'm not waiting for mom and dad. Or I can't wait. Like, I can't wait for my birthday. I'm gonna make this happen. So, went home, said, Mom, I'm not going to college. And I think that's probably one of the scariest things you could ever say to a parent. And I said, you know, I'm gonna join the military. And she made me come up with a pros and cons list for every branch of the military. And said, nope, don't like big bodies of water, not joining the Navy. Said, Air Force, no, if I'm gonna do it, I wanna be in, you know, full-blown action kind of thing. Said, Marines, everything I've ever seen Marines, once a Marine, always Marine. I would like to keep some sense of myself. So I said, the Army's the way to go. So my mother was fortunately able to get a refund check from college, and I joined the Army and went through basic training and AIT to become a mechanic. I was in Fort Knox, and then I came out to Aberdeen in Maryland, and then in June of 2010, I reported to Fort Riley, Kansas. I thought, hey, I'm gonna go see the world. No, I'm gonna go 5 hours away from where I lived. That was great. So, showed up to Kansas, and about 3 or 4 days later, the unit I had just processed into, they pulled me aside and said, hey, we've got this position, we've got this group of guys that are kind of doing something a little bit different. It's a convoy security detachment. Do you have any interest? I said, yeah, sure. Because my mother absolutely would not let me join any combat branch. She said, if I'm signing off on this, you are not going into combat. She said, you can be a mechanic, whatever, but you're not letting you see war. I said, okay. Well, this was kind of me sticking it to my mother. So, signed up for this group, and then about a couple weeks later, we got word that we were supposed to go to Afghanistan in November. And the 1st Brigade, I was in 2nd Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, and 1st Brigade was currently getting certified to deploy. Well, they messed up terribly because they were supposed to go to Iraq. While getting certified in California, they were not ready. So they weren't able to fill their deployment. So they called 2nd Brigade and said, hey, can you guys do this? We went off, got certified, and we took the Iraq deployment. So November 2nd, I remember leaving Kansas, and it was cold, rainy, miserable, 2 a.m. And next thing I remember, I'm stepping off a plane in Iraq. and spent about 2 weeks getting acclimatized, learned weapons and everything like that. And then we went into central Iraq. Our platoon was 60 guys. We had 20 trucks, and the 60 of us were split up. And our entire mission for the year was to provide security for all the supplies that went through central Iraq. And about 365 days I was there, I was on the road for just over 230 of those days, driving through the lovely scenery of Iraq. But probably one of the biggest sticking moments, and put the whole military into, I guess, perspective and in the conflict, was December 17th at 1:42 a.m. Driving down a road, and I had an IED go off about 8 feet from my head. Don't remember any of it, and I've had guys over the years tell me about it, and there must have been an angel that night. Survived, and we went through the whole process. We sat on the side of the road, and eventually we pushed on, carried on the mission, and we got to the base, and after I got medically cleared, I remember at this point getting into a trailer and calling my mom, and she told me this a couple weeks ago, that I told her, I said, Mom, I said, the war just got real. And keep in mind, my mother, my entire family does a coffee, a Christmas coffee, and I so happened to call in the middle of this, when there's friends and family back home in this farming community. And my mother didn't take it well, and but we got through it. And subsequently, we just had an affinity for getting blown up. The entire time I was there, I got blown up 5 times. And we don't know how it happened. We got nicknamed the Bomb Bunnies. we kept attracting it. But I came home from Iraq, and I was in a dark place. There was no level of coping, and I just started drinking, going out with friends. It was a really bad time. And then I moved off post with a bunch of buddies. We got a house. I was like, this is gonna be great. We're gonna party, forget about Iraq. And a buddy of mine that was living at the house, we went out to IHOP one night. The girl he was dating, he proposed to her right there in IHOP, and we were a classy group. And she kind of started, hey, you guys can't be drinking every night, doing everything. So kind of brought me back. Then my wife, at the time, we weren't talking. So I've known my wife since middle school. We've dated on and off, years, and talked. And shortly after Iraq, she came in to the fold, and then I think we had started talking about 5 months, and I proposed to her. I proposed to her right before I left to go get certified to deploy again in 2013. So towards the end of 2012, I proposed to my wife, and then I came back in the end of February, from getting certified for deployment, and wife made the decision, hey, we're gonna go get married. And we went and did a courthouse marriage in Kansas City, and then middle of June, I was off to Djibouti, Africa, and we sat this little compound. We like to joke that it was the most well-known secretive base ever. The base has the highest population of the rank of colonels there. When we were there, there was 53 colonels running around on the base. What they were doing, none of us could figure out. But I mean, every agency was there, and it was kind of the hub for a lot of the operations that go on in Africa and you know, some of the other countries in the Middle East. Did a 6-month deployment there, came back, enjoyed a little bit of, you know, vacation time and whatnot, and then in 2015, 2015, deployed again to Kuwait. And this is, the entire time this has been with the same unit, haven't changed. The thought of, hey, I'm gonna jump around and move everywhere, no. Stayed in Kansas, stayed with the same unit, seen the same people. So, but I got moved to a desk job and did a desk job in Kuwait. I was with a forward support company, which basically is a unit that's attached to the combat unit, and we provide, you know, the beans, bullets, and everything else. We fix everything, and my commander of the unit was he was an armor officer, so he drove around. He grew up with tanks, and so we got spoiled and quite often got to go play with the tanks. I mean, that was a perk, you know, finally being able to shoot something you got, you know, you fix. So, but really through all this, and returned from deployment in June. In May of 16, we went to Jordan and did a joint exercise with the Jordanians. And as we were flying out of the country, we got bussed from where we were kind of shacked up. And as we were getting bussed out, I remember driving down this road, and on either side of the road were the Syrian refugee camps. And it was one of those moments where you realize that it's more than just us, that this conflict is not just America. It's affected other countries and other families, and this is expanded, and it really hit home. So, came back and told my wife, I said, you know what, the amount of hours I'm working, I was working close to 70 hours a week. And I told my wife, the amount of hours I'm working, I'm not making enough money. I said, I'm leaving active duty, I'm gonna go to the reserves, get my degree, and I'm gonna commission back in. So she said, okay, where do you wanna go to college? And when I was deployed, I applied. I had forgotten about the whole nightmare of applying to colleges, and I applied to BU, and I didn't get accepted. I think that was in part because I wrote a really abrasive "this is me" and essay, and I don't think it went over very well. So I told my wife, I said, hey, you know, I've always wanted to go back to the East Coast, and she said, okay, you know, I've never been there, let's do it. So we picked up the house and we moved out here, and currently going to Mass Bay Community College, and then we'll transfer somewhere to get my rest of my degree, and then I'm gonna commission back in. But I think as I've matured, you know, I've learned how to cope being back home. And I've learned every time I've come home, especially the last 2 times being married, that everything doesn't stop. You know, life keeps going, the bills kept getting paid, you know, the food stayed in the fridge, friends moved, came home, did everything. Just because I left, you know, life didn't stop. And my wife definitely helped in, you know, letting me, you know, all right, you've been home a month now, you can start paying the bills, you know, and you know, okay, now you can run to the store. Kind of eased me back into things, and it was good. And the more I've done it, it's become very easy to every time to assimilate back, and I've learned to leave that part, I guess, at the front door, the military aspect at the front door, and then as soon as I walk into my house, I'm civilian Brad, and you know, keep that military aspect, the deployments and things like that, kind of outside. So yeah, that's